Thank you.
No worries. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Homes and Safe Communities on the 15th of May, 2024 at 6 p.m. Before we start, I do have some housekeeping. May I please remind everyone present that this hybrid meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. If a participant wishes to speak, can they please raise their hand in person if sat in the chamber, or use the remote raise hand function located in the bottom left hand side of the screen. This will put you in the speaker queue accordingly. When subsequently invited to address by myself, please then press your activation button in the bottom centre of your screen. Please be patient and aware that there will be a small time lag and that you do not need to press the button again. The response to the system is not instant. If the button or desk microphone changes to red, then it has responded. If a participant raises their hand via the remote function and is not subsequently invited to speak by myself, please could they turn their camera on to indicate or place a message in the chat function. When invited to address by myself, please could all participants ensure that their microphone and camera is on to ensure that they can be seen and heard when actively participating. If this is not possible for any reason, please bring this to the attention of myself and or the Democratic Services Officer as soon as possible. Once you have participated, please remember to turn your activation button off as to not delay other participants from coming on screen and to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues and or to grab the attention of myself or the Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they are addressing the committee, then they should let myself or the Democratic Services Officer know. If a remote committee member has a prejudicial interest and is therefore required to withdraw from the meeting, the Democratic Services Officer will place that participant in the virtual waiting room until such time that the interested item has concluded. Please do not close your browser window whilst in the waiting room, as the Democratic Services Officer will bring you back into the meeting automatically when appropriate. For members attending the meeting in person with a prejudicial interest, they will be asked to leave the chamber for the duration of the interested item and will be invited back into the room as appropriate. If an electronic vote is called for during the course of the meeting, then advice on how to participate will be given accordingly to committee members with voting rights at that time. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 1 is the appointment of Vice Chair. Do we have any nominations? I see Councillor Lloyd Selby's hand is up. I will go to her.
Thank you, Chair. Can I nominate Councillor Belinda Lovelock-Edwards, please?
Thank you. Councillor Hennessy?
Very happy to second that.
Thank you. Do we have any other nominations? I'm guessing from the tumbleweeds, that's a no. And as there are no other nominations, we do not need to have a vote. Therefore, Belinda Lovelock-Edwards is the Vice Chair again this year. Congratulations, Belinda. I'm glad to be working with you again. Item number 2 is apologies for absence. Do we have any?
Yes, Chair. We have had some formal apologies from Gina Doyle, Dave Dutch and Heather Smith from the tenant representatives. In terms of elected members, we have our full complement for the committee tonight, either online or in the chamber.
Thank you, Mark. Item number 3 is minutes of the meeting held on 10th of April 2024. Are we happy to move the minutes? Councillor Hennessy?
Yeah, happy to move.
Thank you. Item number 4 is declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? Again, I see no hands up and nobody wishing to speak in the chamber. So I will go to agenda item 5, which is a council housing development update. Andrew, Mike, if you'd like to take over, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, this is a current position, sort of summarising the end of last year and our ambitions for this year in terms of the Council's housing development programme. Oh, by the way, I'm Andrew Freegard. I'm the operational manager for housing development, if for those who don't know me. Okay, during the last financial year, our spend on housing development was just a little bit over £29 million, and we had 220 units under construction across several sites. At the end of the year, we had completions of 51 new homes, and that included some acquisitions of existing housing. This year's programme has a value of £20.5 million, and we currently have 189 units under construction. And already this year we've completed 13 new homes, and in fact we're actually handing over another 6 on Monday. Most importantly, the Council's ambition for housing development is reflected in the current housing business plan commitment of £920 million over the next 30 years. So, just a flavour of what we have under construction at the moment, and we have 31 units under construction at Closholm View, a second phase in Barry, 20 units of accommodation at Coldbrook Road East in Barry, and the remaining 26 units of accommodation at Hazelwood Road in Barry. Also, we have 12 units at the site of the former Colcott Clinic in Barry, and 90 units at Eagleswell Road in Llandud Major. Also, we have another 10 units of accommodation at Olive Lodge, Port Road, Barry. New schemes that are in the feasibility or early planning stage include 14 units at the former Cowbridge Police Station site in Cowbridge, and that includes the site of the former PRU Erdaith facility to the rear. We also have, at feasibility stage, 23 units of accommodation at Gilbert Street in Barry, and also 14 units at Cadoxton House, Barry. Another 80 units of accommodation at the Western Gateway in Barry, and 51 units of older persons accommodation at Cogham Farm, Penarth. Just a flavour of the income we generated last year in terms of grant availability from Welsh Government. We drew down £3.2 million of social housing grant and managed to secure an additional £8.6 million of transitional accommodation capital programme funding, which is quite an achievement for the year, our record of almost £14 million. We don't stand alone in developing just in a traditional model. We're looking at new ways of working and working in partnership with others. And currently we're collaborating with our housing partners, Newydd Housing Association, United Welsh Housing Association, and a local developer, Edenstone, to develop a land at Upper Cosmeston Farm in Penarth, and that's a Welsh Government site that is currently they're receiving bids for. The scheme itself will deliver 576 new homes, including 50% of them to be affordable. And that also includes infrastructure, community facilities, retail and commercial. We have aspirations to make this village a garden village and a net zero carbon village with enhanced placemaking standards. We hope to hear from Welsh Government that our bid is successful by mid-June, but we are in competition with 4 other bidders at the moment. Also this year, we are working diligently with partners at Cardiff County Council, and we are in the process of securing a long-term development partner for approximately 10 years that will deliver nearly 2,300 new homes. A minimum of 660 of those homes will be in the Vale and will include homes for market sale. An investment of this sort by both Cardiff and ourselves will have a huge social value impact and will include new jobs, training, supply chain opportunities and a great deal of inward investment. We're also responded to the climate crisis, and all our new council homes currently achieve a minimum EPCA rating or SAT 92. The new homes delivered under the Cardiff and Vale Housing Partnership and at Upper Cosmeston Farm, if successful, will achieve net zero carbon in operation. These new homes are designed using what is called passive house principles, which seeks to improve the thermal efficiency and reduce energy consumption within those new homes. We're also adopting a pattern book approach with 21 other social housing providers, and that will be a standardised housing portfolio of housing types that will be manufactured across Wales and will supply 21 social housing providers. I just included a couple of slides of schemes we've completed already. On the left, we have Llyslet with Jenna in Barry. On the right, we have Closholm View Phase 1 in Barry. We have Lonavell in Wint in Barry, which is just outside the Atlantic Trading Estate. And we have our older persons scheme at Lona Ysgol in Penarth. On the left, we have Rosnoriaeth in Barry, and that is the new site adjacent to Lonavell in Wint and on the approach to the Atlantic Trading Estate. And its complementary and sister project for the Cambria is also in Barry and adjacent to Rosnoriaeth. Schemes under construction continue with the former Colcott Clinic at Barry, and we have 14 units of single persons accommodation under construction there. And at Closholm View Phase 2, where we have 31 units under construction, and that's family housing 2, 3, 4 and wheelchair accessible bungalows as well. On the left, we have Coldbrook Road East in Barry, and with 20 units of accommodation under construction there. And on the right is the remainder of the units to be completed at Hayes Road, which will be completed in June of this year. On the left is our temporary accommodation project at Heel Croeso, Llantwit Major. And on the right is the Olive Lodge development at Port Road in Barry. So, diolch, and any questions?
Thank you very much, Andrew. You answered my questions in the agenda conference, so I will open it up to the rest of the committee. Does anybody have any questions or comments they would wish to make? Councillor Haynes has his hand up, and I'll come to you after him. Okay, Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Andrew. These new developments, I'm not entirely sure. Does these new houses also include ones being purchased by the Vale?
Do you mean that we will be building houses for market sale, or do you mean that we're actually purchasing existing housing from the market?
Purchasing existing houses from the market and then using them as council stock.
Yeah, we've started that process as well, councillor, and we purchased 23 last year, and we've got a number of former right to buy properties in the pipeline that we are evaluating in terms of compliance for WHQS and arranging to get valuations with a view to purchase as well.
I just yeah, because it's a little strange because you recently purchased 20 houses in St Athan, the cost of 4.1 million. I know some was under a grant. Yet those houses didn't come to committee. It's a sizable sum of money. A decision was made. No one knew about it. It just happened, and it's not even in any records now when we're talking about ones we've got as new stock, since they've already been allocated already.
Oh, I can answer that. We do have a housing acquisitions policy that was adopted in 2020 that delegated power to the Strategic Housing Board to acquire housing from the market as necessary.
Yes, I'm just thinking it's the sort of thing that sizable sums of money being spent should come to the scrutiny committee beforehand. Obviously, there was a journey when these houses were purchased. It took months. It didn't take hours. And the previous scrutiny committee, this item was discussed, and these houses weren't mentioned. It was mentioned you were in the process of purchasing some houses. I just think it's strange that there was no mention of these specific houses and this sum of money. I'd just like that to be noted, and perhaps we could in future keep us informed on the committee of such things, please.
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you.
Sorry, what was that, Councillor Hennessy? Oh, he asked the same question. Okay, I'll go straight to Helen Payne then. Councillor Payne?
Thank you, Andrew, for that presentation, and thank you. I'm delighted that the council are building more social housing. Obviously, I work in homelessness, so that's an absolute delight, particularly in the East End of Barry, where we have much needed demand for housing. So that's absolutely fantastic. One of the things I was going to ask about was the empty homes purchasing, but the other is from, you know, an additional development in the future. Is there a target to build more affordable housing as well?
Obviously, there's a massive shortfall of affordable housing in available Morgan. I think just over 1,000 units annually that have been identified for the next 5 years by the local housing market assessment. So we look at all opportunities. That's both in terms of, you know, developing our own and looking to the market to provide additional empty accommodation, which can be purchased and then repurposed for our own stock then.
Right, thank you. Brilliant. Thank you, Andrew.
Mike, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, just to pick up on Councillor Haynes's first point, I have spoken to Councillor Haynes in the last few weeks. I have indicated to Councillor Haynes that the acquisition of the 20 units at Burley Place is likely to be a one-off. I can't see opportunities like that arising again, but I have given a commitment and an assurance that should we have a sizable development of that nature in future, we will discuss those provisions with the local ward members concerned, so at least they have the heads up in relation to things that would be happening within their wards. Unfortunately, and whilst we would wish opportunities like that to come up more regularly, it's unfortunately unlikely to happen again. And can just pick up on the point with regard to a target. No, we don't have a target. I guess we have an aspiration clearly to increase the numbers of units that the council is developing in line with the local housing market assessment that Andrew mentioned. Just to remind members that there is a report later on the agenda with regard to the updated local housing market assessment, which will give an indication of the need and issues around supply. And I guess what the council wants to do is to maximise as many opportunities as it possibly can in relation to fulfilling our statutory duties as a local authority.
Thank you, Mike. I have Councillor Aviat, and then I will bring Councillor Hennessy in. Councillor Aviat, we can't see you.
Sorry, can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Now
we can see you.
Oh, yeah. I'm used to being in the chamber, sorry. Yeah, I'm absolutely really delighted to hear all this news. I'm excited about the new developments in Gibbonsdown. And whichever development is done first, can I request whichever members would like to visit? Because I'm so proud of the standard that we're building these properties. I'm so proud of it, and I want to boast and brag about it. So I would like to request a visit to whichever development is ready. Andrew, I'm not sure if this is for you, but I've seen a couple. I was on a walkabout today, and I've seen a couple of ex-council properties with for sale signs. Would it be you I could approach? You know, if I just, because it's in a block, it's in a block, ex-council houses. Would that be beneficial to us to get them back into our possession?
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor. I'd welcome a visit to any of our sites. I would suggest Hazelwood Road And as I said, we've got running handovers at the moment, with completion due in the middle of June. So absolutely, whoever wishes to come, we'll organise something. And I'd be proud to show Scrutiny the quality and standard of build that we are undertaking at throughout our development programme. And yes, let me know where the addresses of the potential vacant dwellings are, and I'll get some of my team to examine the fit for purpose and whether or not we can repurchase them then as well.
Okay. I can see we do have 2 cabinet members waiting, but there are committee members. There's 3 committee members still waiting to speak. So I'll bring those in first and then go back to the cabinet members. Councillor Hennessy is the next on the list.
Both my questions have now been asked.
Oh.
One was about buying back council properties. Currently, how many have we bought?
23 to date, but we have several properties we're examining at the moment, Councillor.
And my second question is, are you able to tell us the breakdown of the current properties you are building? What are 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom?
There's a variety of accommodation. We're building 1-bedroom apartments. We're building 2-bedroom housing, 3 beds, 4 beds. We also build wheelchair accessible properties then. So it's site dependent and relies on input from our housing strategy colleagues then as well to determine the best fit for that particular site. So I can certainly give you a more detailed breakdown of the entire programme and the numbers of housing types. That's not an issue.
My concern is I have the hotel in Roos, like most people know. The shortage I see is of 1-bedroom properties at the moment. And to me, that needs to be a priority, because if you are bronze and you are waiting for a 1-bedroom property, you could be waiting 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. If you are silver and you are waiting for one, you'd be looking at 2 years, 3 years. So for me, we should be having a priority on more 1-bedroom properties if we have the land available to be able to do this.
Absolutely, we do. There has been a trend to move to more 1-bedroom units on any development that we propose. A significant proportion of Hazelwood Road is 1-bedroom units. Colcock Clinic is all 1 bed, as is Coldbrook Road East as well. And there are 1-bedroom properties on Homeview. And then obviously we have the studio apartments under construction at Olive Lodge, and obviously there to assist with the housing crisis and homelessness.
Okay, Councillor Lloyd Selby, if you'd like to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for that presentation, Andrew. Most of the casework that comes in through my email is to do with housing. So just to echo, it's just such good news to see that, we're committed to building new properties, because I think that's offering hope to people, which is incredibly important. So I really welcome the opportunity to visit one of the sites when that's available to us. My question for you, Andrew, is about communication with residents. So obviously when development work, construction work is happening, and people are living around that, how are we communicating with other residents around construction sites? And if there are any questions, concerns, issues arising, what's the communication point? What's the contact point for people in that situation? Thanks.
As I said initially, obviously any communication when we're during the proposal phase or during planning is normally contained within the planning process itself. So that will involve a pre-application consultation. So that's 28 days before submitting the planning application. And obviously we'll endeavour to undertake public events where the community can come along and view proposals and make suggestions or make suggested changes. The most recent one we did was at Cowbridge Police Station, and I think that was early April. I think we had about 75 visitors from Cowbridge, well attended. Councillor Hennessy was there, and it was a great success. We had such welcomed support from the town, because obviously the accommodation we were providing was seen to be the right fit for the town itself, because that was 14 units of older persons accommodation. So again, we take on the public's views at that stage. We will make any amendments we see fit based on that public consultation to inform the detailed planning application, and obviously the planning process takes over then, and will allow the public to further comment. I always hope I get a planning consent. Once we're on site and under construction, we always appoint very competent contractors who sign up to the considerate constructors accreditation, and I always encourage the public go along and ask the site management team if they have any initial questions. If there's something more complex, my team are always available to answer any additional queries that the public may have. Frequently we will do a newsletter periodically, monthly, quarterly, to the community, just to let them know what's happening. If there are any significant activity that might impede their daily life, we like to give them due notice. And as I said, we see the community as an integral part of any development process, because without them, construction becomes very difficult.
Thank you. Councillor Hanks.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Andrew. I've got two negative things, I'm sorry, but on the whole, I think it's a lovely presentation, so much good work being done. The first negative is I'd like to agree with Councillor Stephen Hales on the development of buying those houses. As a local ward member in Lanswet, when you're being told by residents what's happening and we're on this scrutiny committee, it is a little bit embarrassing. So if we could be kept in the loop, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
And the second one, I had an email from you this morning. Thank you very much with an update on Eagleswell. But I must say it is a bit disappointing that we're running now the end of July, August. So that is running over by quite a few months, really. Are we sort of confident that, August time they will be moving in?
There will be phased handovers, subject to planning meeting on the 14th. So we're looking to phase handovers from just after the planning committee meeting and right through then to August. Again, accepted that there certainly unforeseen delays that involve the insolvency of one of the modular homes providers. And in fairness to the contractor and my team, we did extremely well to recover from that, huge setback, and to get the wheels back in motion. But yeah, it was unforeseen, unexpected, and very detrimental. And obviously, I take on board your comments. They're not lost on me.
No, I appreciate that. The other thing, you say a phased handover.
Yes.
I thought with health and safety, the building all had to be complete before, because there's the only one entry onto site, isn't there?
Yeah, we're looking to we'll be looking to marshal traffic around the site whilst we can make units available for occupation. As you said, they are significantly delayed, and that's placing extreme pressure on our resettlement team. So obviously we will be making sure that all early stage occupations are fully safe and secure for that, for the individual living on that or moving in. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, lovely. Thank you very much.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so we have two cabinet members left to speak. Are committee happy for me to bring them in? I see no dissensions. Councillor Wilson.
Just try and get myself on. That's right. Thank you very much, Chair. And can I also thank Andrew for his presentation? I mean, obviously, one of the areas I'm really concerned about, and obviously it's my responsibility for, is obviously housing repairs. And I know that, the development of new housing is vital, but equally, it's also vital that we keep our housing up to standard. And as you know, we're starting to deliver WHQS2, which really is to do very much for the environmental benefits, as you mentioned, Andrew. And obviously, I'd be very keen to do a visit, especially the Hayeswood development, because I see it often on my way to Cabinet on a Thursday from Penarth, and often I go past there, and I see development making good progress there, and it'd be good to visit it. But also, I think it's important that we all learn from these developments and to see what progress we can all make on this as well, because I think there's a big learning curve, especially when we're looking at things like the new type of solar panels that I looked at very recently when I took a visit myself to St. George's and development over there, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and the great work that we're doing. And also things like, generating heat from hot water that we use in baths, and there's incredible new technologies out there. And I'm thinking, this is where perhaps we could all learn from, and perhaps even the residents who are not necessarily in council housing or other housing, social housing, perhaps can learn from as well. So I think maybe if we could give them perhaps advice on our websites on how to do things in a more efficient way, perhaps we could look at that. But thank you very much for your presentation, Andrew. It's much appreciated.
Yeah, just to give you confidence, Councillor, that all these new technologies that you've alluded to, they are under consideration and will form an essential part of our next generation of council housing development.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Councillor Perks.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank Andrew for the presentation and basically to sort of reiterate what other people have said is, I think we should be really proud of the houses that we're building within the Vale. The standard of houses that we've built, I've had the opportunity to go and visit the different houses, and whether that's, the modern methods of construction that are used or the permanent homes that are being built, the actual standard and quality is second to none. We're actually future-proofing our homes as well, which is excellent, so it makes it easier for someone to stay in the home if they, sort of need, have a disability, that they'll still be able to stay there. And, sort of, if we think about that, Welsh Government has stopped the right to buy, which means that we still hold on to properties and we can actually buy our properties back, because we desperately need social housing, as we all know. And I'm very confident the team actually knows and understands the sort of properties that they need to build for the demand that we have. And I'd just like to thank Andrew and his team for the various different projects that they're doing. But I know, sort of all the housing officers are absolutely excellent. And I'm proud to be the Cabinet member for the team. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mike, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points. Acquisitions, we've had a few questions around acquisitions. And I think it's just to sort of draw parallel with some of our other strategic work and how the Housing Department and the Council Housing Development Programme can assist. Members will be aware that we have an adopted empty home strategy, and whilst we don't have, in comparison to other local authorities, significantly large numbers of empty homes, but empty homes members will be aware of. They probably have a few properties within their ward areas are and can become a blight on those areas and those communities. There's an area there for us where we can assist in other programmes within the council as well in terms of acquisition. And I thought it would just be important for me to make that point around our alignment as a team. The only other thing that I wanted to mention was, please bear in mind that it's not so many years ago that the council weren't building anything. Yeah. We've had to start from scratch. We have very limited land resources available to us as a housing department, and therefore, in terms of where we build and how we build and what we can build is very much dictated on what land is available and what we can actually buy. My last point, this is predominantly a report about the Council Housing Development Programme. In tandem with that, clearly, we have been hugely successful as a local authority in drawing down grant for new developments together with private developers, but also, more importantly, our housing association partners. We've drawn down over £7 million worth of additional capital finance through social housing grant across the entire development programme, that's council and RSL, which is a huge and significant achievement. We have a significant programme going forward. There was a discussion around targets earlier. Our programme, we have a full programme of development for the council and housing association partners for the next 3 years. We have a reserve programme should more slippage become available. And as I say, it's the achievement of people like Andrew and his team, but also the support of members. I think we recognise that building housing is not the easiest task in existing communities. We do work hard to try and ensure that what we deliver and develop is commensurate with those communities, but equally we're also aware of the immense pressures that the council is under at the moment. I would rather, as I say, I don't think any of us would find it tolerable to have significant numbers of rough sleepers, and it's due to the efforts and the work of the teams that we don't actually see that in the Vale of Glamorgan as we see in some of our neighbouring authorities. However, you know, we don't want to be in a position where we're playing that level of catch-up either. Thanks very much.
I understand, yes. Thank you. Did you want to come back in, Andrew?
No, not really.
Okay.
I think Mike has encapsulated everything. You know, I probably wanted to say as from a strategic point of view, you know, my role is to deliver in accordance with the housing strategy, and you know, we use our best endeavours to make sure that we deliver quality numbers and with you know, with resilience and as little impact on the community as possible. But inevitably, as Mike said, you know, some communities are more intolerant than others. But again, you know, we will still work with them and try to give them the best product and the best experience they possibly can. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have anybody else who would wish to speak on that item? Councillor Hennessy.
Coming back to what Councillor Hanks said, you said there's going to be a phased handover of the Eagleswell development.
That's correct.
Are we speaking to the surrounding residents about when the handover is going to be?
Yeah, we will be putting a new newsletter out, of course, that indicates that there is a phased and structured handovers of properties between the middle of June and the middle of August. And we'll obviously be informing them of future activity on site, which will be the remaining 12 units that have been recovered from the supplier who became insolvent and had to be transported to Nottingham and due out of the Nottingham factory over the next 6 weeks. So, you know, we do communicate through the site and through our comms team any significant activity that's likely to happen on site, and we will obviously inform them then of the phased handovers at the appropriate time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the recommendation is that we note the presentation, or if committee decides, any recommendations which come out of the decisions get sent back. The only really real recommendations we've had was comments from Councillor Haynes, was it not, about things coming to committee?
I don't know. Yeah,
did I misunderstand that?
That was a question that was raised here. I don't know if that was a specific recommendation and stuff, but as such. But obviously, if Councillor Hennessy, I think, wants to speak, Chair.
Okay.
If it's possible, can we have Councillor Haynes say if this is going to be a motion, please?
Yes, Councillor Haynes, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah. So I would like it to be a recommendation, Chair, that such actions do come to committee first, so we can scrutinise them correctly.
Okay. Councillor Hennessy?
Yeah, I'm happy to support that motion.
Okay. Yeah. Mike, did you want to come in?
I was just going to try and be helpful and say that any acquisitions would be subject to ward member consultation as part of our process. But as I say, a committee may wish those individual cases to come to into committee at due course. They are sporadic, and apart from, as I mentioned during the discussion, they're likely to be the one property here and there.
Yeah.
So in terms of reporting those to Scrutiny Committee, I just wonder whether it might be more appropriate that ward member consultation is undertaken prior to purchase.
That is a good point, actually. I mean, it's very rare we get the large numbers in one go. Very rare. I don't remember the last time that actually happened, to be fair. I don't recall it ever happening before. Councillor Hennessy?
Yeah, if Councillor Haynes is happy for ward members to be notified, I'm happy to support that.
To be fair, I think that would make more sense. Councillor Haynes?
Well, if that's your wish, Chair, but can you imagine a situation where, say, a block of flats came up? And that, you know, it's not so much about the number of properties, but it's about a sizable sum of money being spent without scrutiny. I'm happy for us not to push a recommendation, as long as the officers understand that they should have consulted us because of the sum of money. Not so much the number of properties, but £4 million is a large sum of money to spend without any scrutiny whatsoever. So I'm happy to be guided with what you wish on this matter, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Lloyd-Selby.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say as a committee member that I'm satisfied with the assurances that officers have given around ward member consultation and also the delegations that are in place in relation to property acquisition. I don't particularly see the benefit of these cases coming before committee, and as I say, I'm satisfied with the arrangements that are currently in place and the assurances that officers have given. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lloyd-Selby. I think I'm going to offer up a compromise. Okay. I'm thinking that we stick with the ward member consultation for now, but if there is anything that a ward member feels should be called in, then they can do so. How about that? Happy with that?
I got to say that seems sensible, Chair.
Yes?
Yeah, I'm happy to support that.
Okay. I don't see anybody disagreeing with that. Nobody else seems to have their hands up. I think we should put a recommendation in that keep the ward member consultation, but if there is anything that the ward member feels it should be called in, like a big purchase, it can be done so. Okay? Seems like a sensible compromise. Okay? Thank you. So thank you very much for your time today, guys. That was, as I said in the agenda conference, a very informative presentation. Thank you. Item number 6 is the 2024 update to the Housing Support Grant Delivery Plan 2022-25, and I believe that is Heather and John and Mike again. Mike?
Thank you, Chair. Just a little bit of background. The report indicates that a similar report came to Scrutiny Committee back on the 4th of March, and at that time contained a number of cost-saving options as a result of significant inflationary pressures on the budget and the fact that the Welsh Government grant had been standstill for a number of years. At the 11th hour, Welsh Government indicated just prior to the meeting, you may recall, that additional funding had been made available and our budget allocation was increased by 7.6%, giving us a total supporting people grant allocation, housing support grant allocation, sorry, of just over £5.1 million per annum. The report before you is the annual delivery plan update. Heddwyn can talk you through the considerations that were made in bringing this report to you. The report is coming to scrutiny in the first instance, as you can see from the recommendations, as was the request of I believe, the call-in from what I recall, and any recommendations from Homes and Safe Scrutiny Committee will be fed through to Cabinet in the next 2 weeks to ensure that we're able to submit an approved annual delivery plan in line with the Welsh Government guidance, which was extended to allow us and Heddwyn and his team to do about 4 months' work in about 3 or 4 weeks. As I say, I'll hand over to Heddwyn, and Heddwyn can give you a bit more detail in relation to what's in the annual delivery plan.
Okay, thank you.
Bear with a second, Chair.
Of course.
Heddwyn, can I just double check you're still online, please?
If need be, we can move to the next item and come back. Okay. Okay, while we're trying to track down Heddwyn, we will move on to the next item and come back to this one. Okay, so the next item is agenda item 7, Local Housing Market Assessment 2023. Nick, do you want to take over?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll do the introduction, and hopefully Carol, who's going to assist with the detail of this presentation, is going to be available or sort of have better luck with her technology, hopefully, than Heddwyn. So essentially, this report is asking scrutiny members to consider the draft local housing market assessment, the LHMA, as I'll refer to it thereafter, and then refer any comments to Cabinet, who will then ultimately approve the report before it gets to submitted to Welsh Government. The local housing market assessment is a requirement of Welsh Government. All local authorities are required to complete the assessment on a 2-year basis, and it uses a prescribed methodology set by Welsh Government. So essentially it works by plugging in lots and lots of information into a system or a series of spreadsheets, and that generates a series of outputs then from the report, which are factored into the document that you see in the pack. I won't sort of dwell too much on the detail, because I know Carol is going to cover some of this, and she's got some slides to assist, so I don't want to steal her thunder with that. So I'll probably at this point just pass across to Carol to take us through the methodology and also the key findings to the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Carol, if you would like to come in now. Great.
Thank you.
Can see you and hear you. Good.
Sorry, Carl, we're just going to set up the presentation now for you when you're ready.
Okay. Thank you. Right, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Carol Price, and I'm the Housing Strategy Coordinator. Can we go on to the next one? As Nick has just said, why we do an LA local housing market assessment is because it's a requirement under the Housing Act 1985 that local authorities undertake periodic reviews. Welsh Government have taken that a step further, and they require Welsh local authorities to complete the local housing market assessments every 2 years. So this one is a refresh of the one that we did 2 years ago. The need is determined by looking at newly arising need, which is calculated from the housing projections 2018 that Welsh Government provided. And then we look at a rising need from existing households
and the backlog of need, which is the waiting list that we hold for people in Homes for You and Aspire to Own. The local housing market assessment template is provided by Welsh Government, and there's issues with the rounding up and rounding down of figures, and Welsh Government state in their methodology that the statistical rounding up sometimes leads to totals and tables not adding up properly. It's a common problem when calculating housing need because it goes to so many decimal points that it makes it really difficult. So, caveated in the report, the figures have been rounded for ease of representation and to facilitate easy understanding of the data, but it does lead to some information not actually summing correctly. I've got a couple of slides which will sort of demonstrate this. If you look at this, it's a rounding up example from the new tool that Welsh Government have introduced this year. And it shows you the figures where it says where they to the points in the first diagram. But when you round this up and down, it comes to 39729 comes to 397. 711 comes to 711. But when you add them up, then they don't come to the same total. It's quite difficult to explain. Can you move on to the next slide? So the newly arising need, as I've said, comes from the Welsh household projections. Now in 2022, there were 59,358 households in the Vale, and that's predicted to rise by 2037 to 65,346. So that figure is taken and used in conjunction with all the other data that we put in, things like household incomes, house prices, rental figures, and that is used in the background of the tool to calculate the newly arising need, and it's done in various forms. So if you can move on. So the backlog of existing need, which includes those falling into need, because obviously the people who are going to be made homeless or going to move will already be living in the Vale, so they will be on the waiting list. So this is the numbers of people over 5 years. There's 6,071 looking for social rent, and 1,908 would be looking for intermediate housing. The way the new tool works, it's done over a 15-year period, and they look at the first 5 years, which is where the average annual need for the first 5 years comes out at 1,214 for rent and 382 for intermediate housing. They consider that the need for the first 5 years will be met in those 5 years. So then the next part of the local housing market assessment, they only do it on the newly arising need. So the need that we're looking at particularly is for the next 5 years. Can you move on? So they look at the tool takes the figures for the need, and then it looks at the supply, and the supply comes from relets, because obviously vacancies arise throughout the period of time, and obviously the new build that come online. And this here tells you that there will be 663 social rented homes per year and 40 intermediate homes per year coming online, which then gets netted off against the need to provide you with the shortfall. So you can move on to the next one. So this gives us then the headline annual need for affordable housing over the next 5 years, which is an annual need for 687 social rented properties each year for the next 5 years. and 388 intermediate housing properties over the next 5 years. The intermediate housing, that's mainly low-cost home ownership, but it could be intermediate rented. We've got a few of those, but that's what the overall need we're looking at for the next 5 years. Can you move on? So comparing that to the last local housing market assessment in 2021, as you can see, it looks as if the need has dropped, but the reason for that is the timing of when we take the figures. When we did it in 2021, it was done in November, and it was done just before a review of the waiting list. And the actual number that were on the list at the time was 6,941 people. When we did it in 2023, we did it at a point in time that Welsh Government dictated. And because we'd reviewed the waiting list always drops down after you review it, because people forget to re-register. It takes a while for it to build back up. So the number that were on there then was only 5,927. However, I've done a recce of this March, and there's currently 6,573 on there again. So you can see it builds up. So it's a picture in time, and it depends on when that snapshot's taken, really. Can you move on, please? Right, so the key findings from the local housing market assessment are that the demand is greatest for one-bedroom accommodation. I think every ward is saying that one bed is the greatest need. Mm-hmm. And the highest demand is in Barry and Penarth and Landock. The next slide will show you how this is distributed. So if you can see, in Barry, there's a need for 239 one-bedroom properties. Penarth Landock is 56, and then the next nearest then is Lantwick Major, where there's 38, and that goes the same for 2-bed, 3-bed, 4-bed. So overall, in Barry, there's a need for 344 properties per year. Penarth and Landock, 112. And then the intermediate housing is the same, as the need is greatest in Barry. So all this feeds into what we use the local housing market assessment for. It feeds into the local development plan, and it also feeds into responses to planning applications. I think that was my last slide, actually. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there'll be questions.
I can see Councillor Hennessy would like to come in. Thank you very much, Carol.
Hi, Carol. Hi, Nick. You currently said we have 6,573 on our waiting list. Are you able to tell us what the breakdown is of that? Gold, silver and bronze? Or would you like to get back to me?
Yeah, I was going to say off the top of my head, I can't give you that figure, but it is possible to tell you. Yeah.
Nick?
Yeah, I haven't got the exact figures, Councillor, but it's about 12% of the waiting list is normally gold and gold plus, and there's about 40% of them are on bronze. So a quick mental calculation will give the difference who are silver, really. So, yeah, about 12% of people are on gold or gold plus, which is the highest need. And quite a significant number of people on bronze bands. So those bronze bands are people who are not in identified housing need, but wish to move. So, as was mentioned earlier, we very rarely get down to people on bronze bands when making allocations, but they are clearly people with a desire to move to a different home for a reason.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to have to...
Councillor Hennessy, you love asking awkward questions, don't you? Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you both. I hope my questions aren't as awkward, but I'm a bit of one for data, so I'm sorry I appreciate you taking a projection from the Welsh Government's own projection, so there's a level of error, and there's nothing you can do about that. The data we do have control of, like Homes for You and Aspire to Home, how often is that data audited? In other words, how often do you go through it to check that these people still want these homes and their requirements are the same?
It's reviewed on an annual basis, which is why it was so high in 2021, because it was just before the review. So we asked people if they want to stay on the list, and then the ones that don't say yes obviously drop off, and then they come back on throughout the year. So it's an annual review.
Sorry, next company.
Nick?
Chair, just to add to that, out of interest really for members, each time we do a review and we write out to everyone and ask them to sort of update their circumstances and let us know, we probably lose about 40% of applications on the waiting list. So people don't reply to us. We normally give a time frame of about a month, and there's a series of reminder letters and contacts sent out to people in that time. But as many as 40% of people drop off. But what happens then over time is that we receive fresh applications from those people. So very, very soon we get back to the level that we were at, really. So the waiting list is replenished, as Carol mentioned, it's probably about 6,500 people at this point in time. And we can't build houses quickly enough. More people apply to us than we're able to rehouse and come off the waiting list, if that makes sense. So it's a bit like running on a treadmill, really.
Yes, I understand that. Yeah, you probably get a fair few people who have not realised they're off the waiting list and then bid for a property to be found that they've no longer on the list anymore, and they will then re-register. So yeah, the figures are up and down.
That was going to be my second question. Thank you, Nick, for answering in advance. In other words, I wanted to know what percentage of the people came back who fell off. They just so not really another question, more a comment, really. I'm glad you feed this into the LDP, because by your figures, we should have if the LDP was correct, we should in St Athan should have the same requirement for social housing as Barry. So obviously we don't. So I'm happy you do feed it in. I did ask the planning department when our LDP was out whether they had received what data they had on this, and they were not forthcoming. But thank you, I've got the data from you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Morgan.
There we are. Very quick point, because I always raise questions about older people's housing, and I'm looking at page 15 of the report when you're talking about the estimated need for older people's housing, retirement housing, and also housing with extra care. Just doing a quick statistic, we've just been talking about statistics. We have a population in the Vale, I reckon, at the moment, 22% of our population are over the age of 65, and that is increasing all the time. And I read a statistic in a report previously, which I'm still trying to find, that says that by the year 2035, the population in the Vale of Glamorgan over the age of 75 will have increased by 70%. I'm just looking at the figures and the provision for older people's housing in the future, and I just wonder, is it enough? Are we really looking to this whole future-proof thing? Because I think we're sitting on a ticking time bomb here as to looking after our older people in the future. And I'm concerned about that because I am one now. I've just qualified for my state pension, although I'm not going to throw myself on your care at the moment. But a lot of contemporaries, a lot of people I deal with in my other professional life are very worried about the future. And it's not just the provision of housing, it's the provision of suitable housing for care for people, so that people aren't all living under this dreadful threat. When am I going to end up in a care home? Because nobody wants to go there. So just pointing that out, as I always do when we talk about housing, that we really need to put this as a priority. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Would anybody else like to come in? I see no hands up in the room or online. So the recommendations is that we consider the assessment and refer comments to Cabinet. And that committee notes that Cabinet will be asked to permit the Head of Housing and Building Services to make minor editorial changes to the document once approved. Are we happy with those recommendations? Mark, if you'd like to come in and remind me about the comments.
No, yeah, just on the first recommendation, Chair, were there any specific comments to Cabinet? If not, then obviously committee can simply note the item, but obviously take advice from yourself and the committee chair if there was anything to go back to Cabinet on.
I don't think there was specifically anything, but Councillor Morgan, were you wanting your point about the elderly population to go back to Cabinet?
I think it would be useful just to keep it there, to remind people that this is something for discussion. You know, that the concept of retirement housing has finally crept into the RDLP, and I think it needs to be there in all of our housing considerations for the future.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lovelock-Edwards.
Sorry. I'd like to echo what Councillor Morgan has said on the point of older people. As the champion for older people, I'd like to, that this is something that really does need us to embed into every policy going forward around housing. Thank you.
Oh, Councillor Lovelock-Edwards, I really hope you're feeling better soon. Thank you for participating then. So Scrutiny Committee, recommendation 1, apologies, been a long day. Recommendation 1, we will note the report, but refer that comment back to Cabinet. Agreed? I see no dissension. Scrutiny, the recommendation 2 is that we note that Cabinet will be asked to permit the Head of Housing and Building Services to make minor editorial changes to the document once approved. Are we happy with that? Okay, again, see no. Oh, Councillor Hanks? Councillor Hanks, you have your hand up. Are you looking to come in?
Sorry, just happy to accept it.
Okay.
I was just second.
No problem. Thank you. Okay. So we have finished with that item. Thank you very much for your time tonight, guys. And we will now go back to item number 6, the 2024 update to the Housing Support Grant Delivery Plan, 22 to 25. Heather Wynne, are you ready to come in? Thank you.
Good evening, all. Apologise for disappearing there earlier.
No problem, technology.
It's been working marvellously all day, and then right when Mike was handing over to me, it just literally went dead. So I do apologise for that. If I remember, Mike was just giving a brief background on the update to the housing support grant. So if I'll try and pick up where Mike left off, really. So as most of you might be aware, but just in case some of you aren't, we are required by Welsh Government, as we are a grant-funded service, to produce a 3-year delivery plan, setting out how we would deliver our housing support grant services, and then we are required to produce an annual update, setting out if there are any changes to our delivery priorities going forward. And along with that plan, we are also required to submit a spend plan to Welsh Government, outlining all our spending projections really for the next financial year. So that'll be 2024 through 2025. And Welsh Government, as Mike talked about earlier, they initially gave us an indicative grant that was frozen, that remained static for 3 years, and we were anticipating making significant cuts. But fortunately, we didn't have to go through that because we were very lucky to be awarded a 7.6% uplift for financial year 24-25, which amounts to about £360,000 extra, taking our grant up to approximately £5.1 million. There was, however, a caveat, well, there was a condition, shall we say, with that uplift. Welsh Government had basically outlined to us that they'd been made aware that a number of support providers across Wales were unable to pay all their staff members the real living wage due to insufficient funding from local authorities. So as part of that uplift, Welsh Government did specify that we were, the priority would be to make sure that we were able to use the additional funds there to provide required funding to support providers where it was necessary to ensure that staff members could get paid the real living wage. Now, the members might be aware that in April, the UK government changed the national living wage up to, I think it's £11.44 an hour. Well, the real living wage, which is a separate measure, is at £12 an hour. So that meant we had to go away and do a bit of work, a bit of negotiation with our support providers to work out the additional funds required. So I'm glad to say that we were able to do that with our support providers. And it did require some service providers to have financial uplift. So what we've basically done is, with our spend plan, is we've done a projection for all our current support contracts and new contracts that are due to be retendered, based on all staff members, being paid at least the real living wage. So the spend plan that's been included in the appendices with this report is based on that projection. As part of the grant requirements, Welsh Government requires that we have council approval for our spend plan and delivery plan, and they have asked us if we could get that to them, if we could submit our copy by the end of May, really. So that's why we were bringing this to scrutiny first, and then with anticipation that it would go on to Cabinet for their approval afterwards. In terms of our delivery plan, even though we have had additional funding, as I've said earlier, a portion of that has gone on additional wages for the real living wage. But as Mike did mention earlier, because our grant has remained static previously since about 2021, there's been significant cost pressures on existing services. So in terms of our delivery priorities, we have remained unchanged. So if we're looking at the report there, so our priority 1 is to increase access to floating support services. Priority 2 is to increase access to drop-in. Priority 3 is to increase access to temporary support accommodation. Priority 4 is to maintain access to alarm services. And priority 5 is to ensure that our gateway is efficient, effective and accessible to all. So those priorities remain unchanged. We also have development priorities, which are around complex needs, support accommodation for mental health, support accommodation for domestic abuse, and support accommodation for people with learning difficulties. However, based on our financial projections, we are pretty much standing still, shall we say, in terms of where we are about service development. Based on the real living wage coming in, the providers also, in terms of things like gas and electric, insurance costs for running services, all those have gone up. So in terms of our uplifts and where we are with the spend plan, we don't really have any room to expand services significantly beyond what we've already budgeted for, really. So that's where we are in terms of our priorities. But in terms of new services, then we have to take this year by year. Now we have we have been fortunate previously, been able to expand services. Members might be aware that we've recently recommissioned a mental health service. We've recently commissioned a TCATA, complex needs hostel, and those are what I call big ticket items. If you were to look at the spend plan, which is Appendix 2, you can see under supported accommodation, our allocation to that section of the grant has gone up significantly over the previous years as we've identified the shortfall we've obviously developed that, we've increased that spend provision. So really, I'm just looking for obviously members to consider what our spending really, and obviously any comments. Welsh Government will be looking for us to have approval so that we can get that approved by them going forward really. But if anyone has any comments, any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Aviots.
Hello, thank you, Hedwyn. Do you work with Pobble? I mean, is that part of the Supporting People Network, Pobble? And the other one is the floating support. Are they all from the Vale, or do you because I think I met somebody before and she was from Cardiff, from a housing association. I just don't understand how the support network works. If you can explain that to me, please. Thank you.
Certainly. So Pobble are one of our commission support providers. So we contract out most of our support services. Floating support, for example, Pobble do have they have a large floating support contract. So that means support workers will go out into the community to deliver support to people in their own homes, or for example, people living in temporary accommodation, or perhaps the hotel. In a holiday inn, they may go to visit service users there. So Pobble are one of our commission support providers that deliver that service. Pobble also deliver the one-stop shop on Holton Road. Some members may be familiar with that. So they have that contract at the moment where they provide housing advice and support to people who drop in to that building, or over the telephone, or by email, or WhatsApp, or Skype, or whatever, and digital methods people are more accustomed to using these days. But Pobble also have they have 3 supported housing projects, or accommodation projects, I'd say, on Holton Road. So those are temporary supported accommodation where there are staff members who are based there 24 hours a day. And provide housing-related support to vulnerable people living in with those projects, with the aim of moving them on into the community in a timely manner. And when those people are ready to move on, then they will typically move on through the Homes for You. They get the Gold Plus banding, as someone would get as if they were in homelessness accommodation. And then after they successfully move on, then we would allocate them a floating support worker to help them adjust into their new accommodation setting. That could well be with Pobble, but we have other commission support providers as well. We have TAF Housing, we've Harvard, and so on and so forth. Yeah. I don't know if I'm going on too far, but yeah, hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hanks, you are next.
Thank you, Chair. A similar sort of question, really, like priority 1 and priority 2 are both with Pobble. I was just looking for confirmation that the one-stop shop in Houghton Road would be safe, really. I think it's vital that we had this Welsh Government grant, otherwise, without this money, the services, you can't imagine where we'd be. But I didn't realise that it was less additional wages, so that does alter the outlook. So I just wanted confirmation, really, that the one-stop shop was relatively safe, please.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I just realised I forgot to answer the other half of the other Councillor's question, so I'll come back to that shortly. In terms of the one-stop shop, so that contract runs until next year. We normally run contracts with typically a maximum of 5 years, and it is our intention to recommission that service. So we will go out to market, as we were required to do under the UK procurement rules and also the Vale of Morgan Council procurement rules. So we typically go out to a Welsh Government site known as Sell to Wales. All our contracts get marketed on that website for a minimum of 30 days. And then we will accept bids from registered support providers to tender for that contract. What we normally do is we set a budget, we do our market assessment with neighbouring authorities to work out what sort of prices be paying, what the reasonable prices are, and then we go out and we invite them to bid, and we score them on the quality of their bid, and there's also a price element to that as well. So yeah, our plans are always to our plan is to recommission the one-stop shop. Obviously, our providers are contracted to us, and providers, depending on the outcomes of a tender, are subject to change. So, but of course, we do it in a way so that there's minimum disruption to service users, and our support providers are all fully familiar and experienced with the tendering process. And then, obviously we'll notify councillors, cabinet, for example, on any tenders that are going forward and any decisions that are made due to the size of the sums involved. We do have to get permission from councillors for that sort of thing. But yes, so in terms of our priority, so the one-stop shop is one of our priorities. We have no plans to stop that, and in fact, because we rolled it out during COVID, 2020 when it first came out. It's mad how it's 4 years ago now, but we're running up to 5 years in a bit, and it really managed to deliver so much support in comparison to what we previously were doing, because people can come in when they want, they can pick up the phone, they can email. There's lots of word of mouth, so people will come because their friend has had support there. People are able to get support, pretty much straight away. They don't have to go on our waiting list for weeks sometimes. And it also takes footfall away from staff, pressure on staff, particularly at the civic offices, because we didn't have support staff based there. So people instead can go straight to Halton Road and get the support that they needed. I hope that answers your question. I'm sorry if I'm rabbiting on a bit too much.
No,
I do
thank you
have
very
another
much.
question to answer. I think there's something about Cardiff. There's a question about Cardiff, I believe. I was asked if people in Cardiff were receiving support. Previous councillor asked. So we provide support to Vale residents. If, however, a Vale resident was placed by the Vale Council out of county, in temporary accommodation, for example, in Cardiff or a neighbouring local authority, then we would provide floating support using Vale support staff out to that service user. So I believe there is some temporary accommodation sometime used in Cardiff, and we do have support workers who will provide support to those residents. After all, it wouldn't be fair to place a Vale resident out of county and then they wouldn't, not allow them to have the same level of support that they would get if they were placed within county. Obviously, if someone is a Cardiff resident or a non-Vale resident and they are inside the Vale, then each local authority in Wales has its own housing support grant. They will have their own commissions of providers. And if we are ever, occasionally we do get approached by people who, not quite sure which county they're in or whatever, we do obviously direct them. We do assist them to contact our equivalent support agencies in those relevant counties. Occasionally, you may have on the other foot, you may have another local authority who places one of their residents in a hotel in the Vale, which does happen occasionally. And if one of those residents does contact us for support, then we will point them in the direction of the local authority that has placed them, because that local authority, as they are responsible for them, they should be providing that support to their resident, even if they've placed them here. So I hope I've answered that question. I forgot. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm aware that other authorities do place tenants. I believe there is a property on Romley Road where somebody from out of county has been placed, but their local authority is the one responsible for them. Councillor Lloyd Selby.
Apologies. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Heather, for taking us through that. I mean, it's really good news, isn't it, that funding from Welsh Government means that the savings that we were afraid would have to be made some time ago have not had to be made, and things like the one-stop shop are able to continue to do such a fantastic job supporting local people. I was really pleased to see that there's been an expansion of mediation support to include landlords and tenants. I'm just wondering if you've got any information on how that's going, what the impact of that is. I recognise it's early days and it might be too soon for you to report back, but if there's any information, very interested to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, so we've so part of the changing of Welsh Government grants. There was an older, what we called a homeless prevention grant, which was separate from the housing support grant, but Welsh Government decided to merge it in with our grant. So we took on responsibility then for mediation services in the Vale. It made sense really because, you know, they're doing much the same work or very similar work, well, with the intended outcome to prevent homelessness. So in terms of the mediation then, so we fund what we call the family mediation service, what we call the Jigsaw project. That is delivered by a support provider, Llamai, which some people may be aware of. So they're working with teenagers that are at risk of being made homeless due to falling out with their parents, family breakdown, that sort of thing. I don't have any statistics to hand, but I can certainly get, they do an annual report for me, which I submit to Welsh Government, Councillor Lloyd Selby, and I'm happy to go away and get the latest statistics for you if you'd be interested in seeing the outcomes there. But I do get a lot of feedback through ongoing monitoring of the service, and it is very successful. It does ease pressure on homelessness services, but of course not all tenancies can be saved. Sometimes it's not suitable or safe for a young person to stay in the family home, and obviously in that case then it's not a failure to by not keeping them there. It's not a failure. It's actually moving from that setting and finding them alternative accommodation, shouldn't be seen as a negative. That that is beneficial to their welfare. But I can definitely go and get you the statistics on the successes there, Councillor.
Thank you, Heddwyn. I don't want to make more work for you or your team because I know how busy you are. So if you have it easily to hand, I'd be really grateful to receive it. But please, if it isn't easily...
No bother at all, Councillor.
Okay. Otherwise, I was going to say we could just include it in a future report. But thank you very much for that.
Okay.
Heddwyn, on that, if it is to hand, indeed, as Councillor Lloyd Selby said, I think the rest of the committee may be interested in seeing those statistics as well.
Happy to provide that to everyone.
Thank you.
No
again, only if it is easily to hand. Otherwise, yes, bring it as a part of a future report. Okay.
We pay our providers to nations so on the contract, so I go on to them and they provide it to me. So that's
fair enough. Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have any other people wishing to speak? Right, no more hands up. So we will go on to the recommendations. And the recommendation is that we consider the 2024 update to Housing Support Grant Delivery Plan 22 to 25 and refer comments to Cabinet for approval. I believe there weren't really any specific comments to go to Cabinet, were there, Mark?
I don't believe so, Chair. NS Committee, yourself can correct me, but I don't think there's anything specific, so it would just go on to Cabinet then for noting. Yes. Yeah.
Are we happy to note the report? Okay, and that the Scrutiny Committee considers the Housing Support Grant Spend Plan 2024 to 25 and refer comments to Cabinet on 23rd of May for approval. Okay. Mark?
Again, I don't know if there was anything specific in terms of comments. If not, then as with recommendation 1, if committee are happy to note.
I don't believe there were any either. Thank you, Councillor Hennessy, for agreeing to note. Thank you. Okay, so I will say thank you very much to Heddwyn and Mike for your time. You know, you can stick around, you can go, you can do whatever you like, but thank you very much. The last item on the agenda tonight is the fourth quarter scrutiny recommendation tracking 2023 to 24 and proposed annual forward work programme schedule 24 to 25, and I will hand you over to Mark. Thank you.
Okay, thanks Chair, thanks committee. This is part of our regular reporting to yourselves around outstanding recommendations and also the future forward work programme for the municipal year 2024-25 as well. Contained in the report are a number of the sort of regular points that we make in terms of reporting to the committee on progress in terms of recommendations, which we track throughout the year. We have a number of items again around recommendations, so appendices A to D. Mostly the recommendations now have been tracked and are completed. We've got a few that are ongoing, but as members will be able to see, those are regularly updated, and once fully completed and are satisfied they're okay, we will obviously put them to complete and share with committee for final approval once that's done as part of our regular quarterly reporting. In terms of other issues for consideration, we've also got our Appendix E, the annual Cabinet Forward Work Programme, which was approved by Cabinet on the 25th of April, which also ties in with Appendix F, which is the actual Scrutiny Committee's Forward Work Programme as well. Just as we normally say, this is a bit of a movable feast in terms of the reports. They do move around, they might slip. Also, dates may change. Just for noting for committee, bear with me a second, is for example, we've got the corporate safeguarding. If committee are happy, I will update this, but we've been recently informed following the publishing of the forward work programme that safeguarding report now will probably slip to September, and subsequently the mid-year report will also potentially slip to January. So if committee are happy, before we update the report onto the website, then we'll make those changes if cabinet committee are happy. In terms of other updates around the recommendations, as I said, most are completed now, but we've got a few ongoing, such as the traveller site. We're still receiving updates on that. Also, items on the domestic abuse. We've also had the previous recommendations around the YJEAS report now. They're complete. We've also the Safer Vale Partnership. There's some information that's still being followed up on that, so that will stay ongoing for the moment. Just to make committee aware as well, as part of the work with a cabinet, there has been meetings with the chair and vice chair of the scrutiny committee and others with cabinet. I think this was positively received, and I think there was a few sort of recommendations that came out of that in terms of perhaps for example, streamlining the process between scrutiny and cabinet. For example, we've had some pre-cabinet scrutiny tonight here with the housing support grant. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but as per the recommendations, we're looking to get the status of the actions listed in appendices A to D of the report agreed. The noting of the Cabinet Annual Forward Work Programme at Appendix E, and of course Appendix F, approval for the Annual Forward Work Programme for it to be approved and uploaded to the council's website, subject to obviously the change that I suggested earlier on about the corporate safeguarding and that slipping. So I'm happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. I have no questions, as again we discussed this in the agenda conference, but Councillor Hennessy would like to come in.
Yeah, hi Mark, thanks for the report. I've just got one on Appendix A. As long members of this committee know, this gypsy site and the traveller site has been ongoing for a number of years now, probably 5, 6, I can't remember. Are we anywhere getting this sorted?
Obviously, we've got the current list of updates on there, but I would have to refer that to Mike to see if there have been any further updates. So obviously, he can bring in a bit more detail on that.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I suppose hot off the press. That's not to say that there's an extremely positive statement I can make at this stage. What I can say is the council is currently has drafted, in line with Welsh Government guidance, its new Gypsy and Traveller Needs Assessment. That report is currently in draft and has been ping-ponged, if that's the right word, back and forth between ourselves and Welsh Government over its content. That will be reported to Cabinet in due course, which will give us an indication of the annual need, or the 5-year need, as members will be aware of, that report requires us to identify. In terms of identification of sites, again, I guess it's not a surprise that there is need identified in the draft report, as I say, which will come before committees in due course. We have gone through another process, or we're going through the process now as part of the RLDP. So the revised LDP will require us also to examine where we have identified a need for gypsy and traveller sites, to ensure that that is included within the identification of sites is included within the revised LDP. In preempting that work, and as you know, there is a timescale. There will be a consultative timescale for the RLDP, and will come to council. I think it's in 2025, is it? I don't have the dates to hand. We've preempted that to a certain extent in that we've colleagues in planning and housing colleagues have gone back out for call for sites. We had two potential candidate sites initially from that call for sites that came forward. Unfortunately, however, the landowners or agents have now decided that they didn't wish those sites to come forward as gypsy and traveller sites. So to a certain extent, we are in exactly the same position as we were 2 years ago, 4 years ago. Obviously, you know, when this report was initially presented to Homes and Safe Communities Committee, officers are mindful that there will be a requirement within the RLDP to identify sites, and we will continue as part of that process to, as I've mentioned, will continue on. So that's the update that I have at the moment. It may well be that when we come to take the Gypsy and Traveller Needs Assessment report through to Cabinet or Scrutiny, referral to Scrutiny, that there may be a further update that we may be able to give at that time in terms of the strategy for the council in relation to how we're going to ensure that our revised local development plan is robust and enables that plan to be adopted in due course by Welsh Government.
Thank you very much, Mike. Yes, that's been a situation that's been going on for a while. I mean, I've been on this committee since 2017, and I believe it was one of the earlier meetings in that particular year. So, and it's come up again since. So, So yeah, it is something that needs sorting. However, I believe there have been various issues which we are attempting to overcome in many ways. So that's just something that will take as long as it takes. Unfortunately, we can't really rush it. Okay, so are we happy to go with the 3 recommendations? Unless, sorry, does anybody else have any questions? I'm getting ahead of myself. No questions or comments? No. Okay. Okay. Are our committee happy to accept the 3 recommendations? Councillor Hennessy's indicated. Anybody else? Nobody else. Yeah, Mark?
Just to add for recommendation 3, if committee are happy, prior to me uploading the ward work programme, I'll include those changes I alluded to the corporate safeguarding report for annual and mid-term, where the dates have changed slightly. So I'll make those amendments prior to be uploading if everyone's okay with
Well,
that.
nobody has indicated they wish to say anything to the contrary, so I would assume that that has been accepted by the committee, and I'm happy for that to be done. Okay. Thank you. That brings us to the end of the meeting. The last thing to say is that the date of the next committee meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, the 12th of June, 2024. Thank you for your time tonight, everyone. Oh, Mark?
Sorry, Chair, just to mention as well, there are no urgent items for parts 1 and 2.
Oh, I keep forgetting about when there's no items, I forget about them. Yes, there are no urgent items into part 1 or part 2. So next meeting is Wednesday, the 12th of June, 2024. Thank you, everybody, for your time tonight. I will let you have your evening back. Go and enjoy yourselves, relax. I'm sure you've all had a very, very busy day. Thank you. Bye.